What if the reason you can't feel loved is because you're still at war with yourself? You've been told you're a good person. People compliment your kindness, your generosity, and the way you always show up. You're the one they turn to when they need comfort, when they need support, when their world is falling apart, and you give it every time. But when the noise dies down and you're finally alone, a strange emptiness creeps in. A quiet question you don't dare say out loud. If I'm so loved, why do I feel so unloved? You go through the motions, smiling, nodding, doing the right thing. You give love endlessly. But deep down, it feels like there's a wall between you and the love you were trying to receive. Compliments don't stick. Affection feels hollow. You hear the words, but they don't land. It's as if your heart is closed off to something it secretly longs for. What if I told you that love can reach the parts of you that you've buried? That no matter how many people care about you, you'll never truly feel it. As long as there's a version of yourself you still reject, there's a side of you you've hidden maybe for years, the angry version, the broken one, the parts of you that were once called too much or not enough, so you tucked them away. You tried to become what the world needed, and you succeeded. But at what cost? Carl Jung warned us about this. He said that the more we disown our shadow, the more it controls us. And maybe that's exactly what's happening now. Maybe you're not unloved. Maybe you just can't receive love while still waging war against the most human parts of yourself. So I ask again, what if the reason you can't feel loved is because you haven't yet loved what you've buried? Before we dive deeper into this journey of the self, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. That way, you'll be the first to know when the next piece of insight arrives, something that might just shift the way you see yourself, your relationships, and your place in the world. If this message is resonating with you, chances are the next one will too. You probably know someone like him. Maybe it's someone in your life right now, or maybe, if you're honest, it's you. He's the kind of person who's always in love or always heartbroken, constantly chasing the next relationship, the next high, the next person who finally makes him feel whole. On the surface, he seems romantic, passionate, even charming. He says all the right things. He gives his heart fast and fully. And yet, something always feels off. The spark fades quickly. The closeness turns into neediness. What begins as passion becomes panic. He clings. He doubts. He spirals. He is convinced the problem is out there, that maybe he just hasn't found the right person yet. That maybe love will finally feel real once they stop pulling away, once they love him better, once they finally see how much he gives. But no matter who he dates, how much they say they care, how many nights they stay, or how many I love yous they offer, he never really feels it. It slips right through him. Because the truth is, he's not searching for love. He's searching for something to fill a silence that lives inside him. A silence he's been afraid to face since he was a child. When he was younger, love came with conditions. Maybe he had to be the good boy, the smart one, the funny one, anything but what he truly was in his most raw, emotional state. He learned quickly. To be loved, he had to perform. He had to earn it. And when he didn't, love would disappear. So he made a choice, though he didn't realize it at the time. He buried the parts of himself that didn't win approval. The fear, the softness, the shame, the anger. And in their place, he built a persona version of himself that looked lovable, that pleased others, that never rocked the boat. The world applauded the mask. But the boy underneath stayed frozen in time, unseen, unloved, untouched. And now, as an adult, he tries to heal a wound that isn't visible to anyone else. He throws himself into relationships, hoping someone will reach that buried child and finally tell him, "You are enough." But it never works. Because every time someone gets close, the mask starts to slip. The vulnerability he's so afraid of starts to rise. And instead of embracing it, He pushes them away or sabotages the connection, not because he doesn't want love, but because he is terrified. They see what he's been running from his whole life. What he doesn't realize is that love can find him until he finds that hidden version of himself. Until he holds space for that inner child, the one who didn't feel worthy, the one who still waits to be chosen. Not by a partner, not by a friend, but by him. Carl Jung said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And this man is living proof. He keeps chasing people, hoping they'll do the one thing he refuses to do for himself: love what he's buried. But no one can love the version of you that you still hate. No one can meet the need you keep denying exists. You think you're craving love, but what you're actually craving is reconnection with the parts of yourself you left behind in order to survive. Until you go back for them, no relationship will ever feel safe. No "I love you" will ever feel true. Because deep down, you won't believe it. And how could you? You're still trying to hide the very thing that needs love the most. Carl Jung called it the shadow, not in the way Hollywood portrays darkness, but in a deeply human, psychological sense. The shadow isn't evil. It's not the villain within. It's simply the part of you that was never given permission to exist. Your shame, your fears, your rage, your unmet needs, your softness that was never safe to show. These are the pieces you buried, not because you wanted to, but because the world made it unsafe to keep them visible. At some point, you learned that certain emotions made you too much, that some parts of you were wrong, weak, or unlovable. So you did what any child would do to survive. You pushed them down, locked them up, and put on a mask. That mask became your personality. That mask became how you survived. That mask became how you received love, or at least something that looked like it. But here's the paradox Jung uncovered. The more we repress the shadow, the more power it has over us. It doesn't just disappear. It seeps into our relationships, our choices, our self-worth, and our emotional patterns. And worse, we don't even notice it. As Jung famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Let that sink in. You'll keep dating the same person in a different body. You'll keep playing out the same story over and over again. You'll keep wondering why love feels so close and yet so unreachable. And you'll say things like, "Why do I always attract emotionally unavailable people? Why do I give everything and still feel alone? Why does love always leave me?" But those aren't coincidences. They're not bad luck. They're not the universe being cruel. They're your shadow writing the script behind the scenes. You see, when you bury pain, it doesn't vanish, it seeks reenactment. The part of you that felt abandoned as a child will unconsciously seek lovers who trigger abandonment. Not because you want to be hurt, but because your psyche is trying to resolve what was left open. It wants closure. It wants healing. But instead of healing, you repeat. Until you become aware. Until you stop projecting the love you crave onto others and start offering it to the parts of yourself you've disowned. This is the terrifying and beautiful truth Jung left us with. The love you think you missing can only reach you to the extent that you are willing to love your shadow, to embrace the sadness you've numbed, to hold the anger you were taught to fear, to forgive the mistakes you've condemned yourself for. Because until you do, those buried emotions will leak out sideways in anxiety, in avoidance, in codependency, in perfectionism, in the quiet belief that you are somehow broken. But you're not broken, you're fragmented. And fragments can be brought back together. Shadow work isn't a trendy spiritual buzzword. It's a psychological necessity. It's how you reclaim the parts of you that were lost in the pursuit of love. It's how you stop begging the world to validate you and start becoming the person who no longer needs to beg. Only then can you experience love not as a transaction, not as a performance, but as a recognition, a resonance, a return. Because once you've faced your shadow and embraced it, you'll finally understand something radical. You were never unlovable. You just hadn't yet loved yourself completely. You've probably heard it 1,000 times. Just love yourself. But what does that even mean? For most people, self-love has become a trendy phrase. It looks like bubble baths, vision boards, positive affirmations on mirrors, or buying yourself something nice after a hard day. And while none of that is inherently wrong, let's be honest, it barely scratches the surface. Because loving yourself isn't about pampering. It is not about becoming someone you can tolerate in photos or someone who's finally fixed. Real self-love, the kind that transforms you, isn't soft. It's not sweet. It's not Instagrammable. It's war. And that war begins the moment you decide to stop abandoning the parts of yourself you were taught to hide. The truth is, most people don't love themselves. They love the version of themselves they created to survive. The version that smiles through discomfort. That never makes anyone uncomfortable. That's always productive, always pleasing, always polished. And they spend their lives trying to silence the voice underneath. The one that's angry, ashamed, scared, needy, flawed. The one that was told early on, you're not lovable like this. But here's the paradox. The love you were so desperately seeking, one to find you in the performance. It can only meet you in your truth, in the raw, cracked, complex parts of you that you've buried in the dark. As long as you're at war with yourself, you will be at war with love. You will doubt the compliments. You will question the affection. You'll brace for rejection because deep down, you've already rejected yourself. This is why the line hits so hard. You can't expect someone to love the parts of you that you're still trying to kill. You may not be physically harming yourself, but emotionally, spiritually, you've been erasing parts of your story. Maybe you silence your needs to be easy to love. Maybe you avoid your past because it makes people uncomfortable. Maybe you pretend you're over things you're still bleeding from. But love can't survive in the places where you're still hiding. Because people can only meet you as deeply as you've met yourself. If you've never held space for your own sadness, you'll sabotage anyone who tries to. If you've never embraced your own anger, you'll fear losing control. If you've never seen your own worth, no one else's belief will ever be enough. That's not because you're broken, it's because you're divided. You've split yourself into acceptable and unacceptable pieces, and now you're wondering why love only ever feels halfway. So the invitation is this. What if self-love wasn't about becoming better, but about becoming whole? What if it's not about fixing what's wrong, but embracing what's real? What if the path to love isn't out there, but inward toward the very parts of you that make you uncomfortable? This isn't easy. This is the work of a lifetime. But it's also the only way. Because until you look in the mirror and say, I will love even this, even the fear, even the weakness, even the part that wants to disappear, you'll keep running from others, from connection, from yourself. But the moment you turn around and stop running, that's when everything begins to change. Let's get honest for a second. Most people don't fall in love with you. They fall in love with the version of you that you've made safe to be seen. The charming one, the strong one, the endlessly supportive, never needy, always put together one. And you've gotten good at being that version, haven't you? So good that even you sometimes forget it's a performance. But late at night, when no one's watching, the truth creeps in. You feel unseen. Not because people don't care, but because they don't know you. Because you've never shown them the parts that really matter, the parts that ache, the parts that fear, the parts that were once told they were too much, too needy, too broken. You can't be fully loved when you're only half present. That's the practical impact of what Jung called shadow integration. Because here's what most people miss. Love isn't about perfection. It's about recognition. It's about two people saying, I see your mess, and I'm still here. But that can't happen if you're hiding yours behind a polished mask. Only when you stop rejecting your own wounds can you allow someone else to witness them. Not to fix them, not to carry them, but to know them and still choose you. That's when love becomes real. That's when it stops being a transaction of validation and starts being a sacred space of mutual truth. And it goes both ways. When you've learned to sit with your own sadness, you stop being afraid of someone else's. When you've forgiven your past, you stop When you've accepted your darkness, you stop projecting it onto the people closest to you. You become safer. Not in the sense of being easy or predictable, but in the way that people can relax around you. They can be human because you've made peace with your humanity. There is nothing more magnetic than a person who's no longer performing. Nothing more attractive than someone who's whole, who's made peace with their contradictions, who doesn't chase or cling or shrink to be loved. Why? Because they already love themselves. Not in a superficial, motivational kind of way, but in a raw, earned way by walking through their own hell and refusing to leave any part of themselves behind. So ask yourself, how can someone truly love you if they've never even met the real you? The real you cries. The real you gets insecure. The real you has failed, has grieved, has fallen apart. The real you is still healing from wounds you rarely speak of. And that real you, that version, is desperate to be seen. Not pitied, not saved, just witnessed. That's what happens when you start to love what you've buried. You become available not just emotionally, but spiritually. You stop needing to impress or prove or pretend. You start showing up with nothing to hide. And the people who are meant for you, they feel it. They don't just love your light, they respect your depth. Because your healing doesn't just free you, it gives others permission to show up whole too. You stop attracting relationships built on fantasy, on roles, on performance, and you start building love on truth. Not the truth that's easy to share, but the truth that sets you free. How to begin loving what you've buried. You've seen the pattern, you've felt the cost. Now the question becomes, how do I begin to love what I've spent a lifetime avoiding? This is where most people stop. Not because they don't want to change, but because they don't know how. How do you face a part of yourself you've been trained to hate? How do you feel compassion for the thing inside you that makes you cringe? The answer isn't an overnight transformation. It's not about fixing anything. It's about showing up again and again for the uncomfortable parts. Not to conquer them, but to be with them. This is the beginning of shadow work. Carl Jung said that the shadow is not to be destroyed, it is to be integrated. It is not evil. It is you, untouched by light. And to bring light to it, you must meet it. Step 1. Awareness without judgment. Start by noticing your triggers. What makes you defensive? Who do you secretly envy or despise? What kind of people do you instantly judge? These reactions are arrows pointing to your shadow. Not because those people are bad, but because they reflect something unresolved in you. Instead of reacting, ask, what part of me feels unsafe right now? Then sit with it. No fixing, just presence. Step 2. Shadow journaling. Set aside 10 to 15 minutes daily. Use prompts like, what part of me am I afraid others will see? When do I feel like I'm faking it? What am I ashamed of and why? What do I most want to hide from someone who loves me? Write without filters, no grammar checks. Just emotional honesty. You may cry. You may get angry. Let it come. That's not weakness, that's release. Step 3. Mirror work and self-dialogue. Stand in front of a mirror. Look into your own eyes. Say, I see you. I'm not leaving. Then speak directly to your shadow. Give it a voice. Ask it, what are you afraid of? When did you first feel abandoned? What do you need from me now? At first, it might feel silly, even uncomfortable. That's okay. You're building a relationship with the version of you that's been starved of compassion. Step 4. Mindful emotional presence. When a difficult emotion rises, fear, jealousy, anger, don't escape. Don't scroll. Don't numb. Don't explain it away. Instead, breathe. Feel where it lives in your body. Place your hand there. Whisper, "You're allowed to be here." This simple act rewires your nervous system to stop treating your feelings as threats. Step 5. Consider therapy or support. Shadow work isn't always safe to do alone, especially if you carry trauma. A trauma-informed therapist, coach, or somatic practitioner can hold space as you uncover painful truths. This isn't weakness, it's wisdom. You don't have to go to war alone. You're not broken for needing help. You're brave for choosing to heal. Loving what you've buried is not a one-time project. It's a lifelong practice, a conversation that deepens over time. But here's the reward. You stop being afraid of yourself. And when that fear disappears, so does your need to hide. You begin to live as someone who is unapologetically whole, not perfect, not always polished, but free. And that freedom, that authenticity, is where love finally feels real. So here we are. After all the searching, all the explanations, all the unraveling, you're left with one simple, piercing truth. The world cannot give you what you refuse to give yourself. No amount of affection, attention, or admiration will ever land, if it's being offered to a version of you that even you don't accept. And this is the quiet tragedy so many of us live. We ache for love, but we've made ourselves unlovable to ourselves. Not because we're flawed, but because we've rejected the very parts that make us human. We think healing will come from someone finally staying, but the real healing begins when you stay. When you stay with the fear, when you stay with the shame, when you stay with the trembling, buried voice that has waited decades for you to say, "You don't have to hide anymore." This is not about becoming better, it's about becoming whole, becoming real, peeling away the masks, not to expose something ugly or broken, but to finally meet the self that was pushed into the shadows. Carl Jung reminded us that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. It's not in perfection that we find love. It's in the raw honesty of being seen fully and still being held. But that kind of love can't reach you if you're still hiding behind performance, if you're still editing yourself to be palatable, if you're still silencing your soul to earn crumbs of connection. No one can love you completely if you're offering them fragments. So the question becomes, are you ready to love what you've buried? Not because it's pretty, not because it's easy, but because it's yours. Because your wounds are not the enemy. Your anger is not the problem. Your grief is not something to get over. They are doorways. Doorways into the places where you were once left alone. Doorways into the conversations you never got to finish. Doorways into a deeper, fuller version of yourself. The one who knows how to stay. The one who knows how to feel. The one who knows how to love without conditions. When you begin to love what you've buried, something sacred happens. You stop fearing yourself. And when that fear dissolves, so does the armor. You no longer need to convince anyone of your worth. You simply embody it. You begin to attract people who don't just want your light. They're willing to sit with your shadow. Because you've already done it. Because you've shown them how. And this is where love becomes real. Not fantasy, not escape, but recognition, resonance. A meeting of souls that no longer need to hide. So again, I ask, are you ready to return to yourself? To stop waiting for someone else to rescue the parts of you you've abandoned. Because the love you are craving, the safety, the wholeness, the deep breath you've been holding, they don't live out there. They live inside the part of you that you once feared was unworthy, but it is now calling you home. And maybe, just maybe, this time, you're ready to answer. Because the love you're searching for begins where the war inside you ends. And that kind of peace, it changes everything. If this message stirred something in you, if it helped you see yourself a little more clearly, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. I share more content like this to help you wake up not just to the world, but to the truth inside you. And I'd love to hear from you. What part of this resonated most? What truth did you need to hear today? Drop a comment below with your reflections. Let this be a space where we learn from each other, where we remember. We're never healing alone.